Hey class, I just wanted to take some time to go over the integrative case paper and genogram, which is due at the end of week 13. I know all of you have been thinking about this week, given your week 12 discussion was focused on describing the problematic episode from a past clinical case that you will be using for this paper. So, given that you've already gotten started on this, I wanted to give a little bit more information about the kind of case that you might use, and I can kind of give you some feedback based on your week 12 discussions as well. You're going to want to choose a particular problem or particular point in time related to this clinical case, something specific. It can be something related to like a family trauma. It can be something related to a particular diagnosis that one of the family members may hold. There's a variety of different things that we could identify as a problematic episode. You just want to make sure that you identify it and that you're specific about it in your description. So for the assignment, again, it does have to be from a present or past clinical case. If you're having a hard time identifying a present or past clinical case, reach out to me. Like I said, regarding the week 12 discussions, you can potentially use a scenario from a book or a movie just so that you can, have some information to use for your paper. So basically, this is going to help you identify an assessment of the particular issue, the problematic episode. So basically, what is your hypothesis of what is causing this problem? And then you're going to kind of evaluate that through a particular model, a theoretical model that we've discussed. But for this paper, you are going to be heavily focused on the intervention portion. Identifying how you might use particular interventions for the problematic episode within the family. So essentially, while the first paper that you wrote for this course was more focused on assessment, this particular paper is going to be more focused on intervention and solutions. So as you can see, these are the components of the paper. The first section is going to be the hypothesis. This is going to be basically your understanding of the assessment of this particular family, given the problematic episode. But it's not going to be just related to your own views about it. You're going to be relating this to theory. So there is an expectation that you use one of the theoretical models that we have discussed within this course, and you provide citation appropriately. The other thing that just to mention here is, this is where you're kind of going to be describing the problem, so making sure not to use any identifying information is important. You can even write something at the top of the page saying the names were changed, like identifying information was changed to protect the identity of the family that you are going to be describing. So then within the next section, there's the sociocultural factors, just any relevant factors that have contributed to the problem. Every family, there is going to be some kind of sociocultural factor. Keep in mind that this can be a lot of different things. It can be socioeconomic status, it can be race, ethnicity, it can be sexuality, it can be a lot of different things within this section. And then we have the family life cycle stage. You all should be very familiar with this at this point. You can reference the article from week 1. That is something that we have looked back at multiple times now within this course. And just identify the stage that you would see this family being in right now during this particular problematic episode, and any issues or factors related to that stage that might be contributing to the problem or potentially even helping them towards the solution. So then the next section, you will be describing the family strengths. Every family has them, even if they are, really struggling at this particular period of time, and there's a lot of problems, there are going to be strengths that can be identified within the family. Make sure to identify family-related strengths, such as, an example of this might be their structure within the family or their ways of communicating as a family. Those would be family strengths, but then also identify some individual strengths. That would be strengths for each individual member of the family. So you might reference one family member is very empathic, or one family member might be a good communicator. Those would be examples of individual strengths. The next section is the family interventions. This should be the bulk of your paper. This should be the longest section for sure. Please place the majority of your focus on this section of the paper. So for this section, you're going to be choosing 2 different practice theories. So this doesn't mean just 2 different interventions. It would be interventions based in 2 different theories that we covered in this class, and they're listed here. So structural Bowenian, contextual, the communication theory, psychodynamic solution focused, narrative, emotion focused therapy, it could be included there as well. You can use your group family therapy theory grid to reference, to kind of look back and, see the different interventions that might be helpful for the family during their problematic episode. And I just am asking that you be specific about how you would carry out the interventions. I'm looking for more than just, saying I would use enactments. I would suggest kind of describing how you would carry that out, or where would you use enactments, and how do you think the family might respond. You can even use kind of like a dialogue here. Just make sure that you put it in the appropriate APA format. And so I'm really looking for what would you do and how might the family react. So, again, like describing how you would carry it out, not just, I would use this intervention because this is the reason it would be helpful, but how would you actually put that into practice? This is a good way for you to kind of look at how you would, put this into practice within your own work. And then the final part of this section, just want to make sure that you don't miss it, is provide a little bit of a discussion on how you would evaluate the efficacy of your intervention. So, for example, this would mean, maybe some treatment plan updates every 3 months, or maybe would you use any kind of standardized tools for assessment of the intervention? Or it could even be just verbal check-ins with the family about how they're feeling about the intervention and how it's been within their family environment. And then we'd move on to the value conflicts section. I think this is always an important section to consider. We're kind of looking at issues related to countertransference here. Or transference issues, just looking at how, your own values might interact with the values of this particular family. And if there are issues that were to arise related to this, how would you face them and how would you work through them? Examples of this would be just simply, when appropriate, there's certain issues that are appropriate to just lay out on the table to the family and say, like, hey, like, I'm noticing that your reaction to me is this, this, and this. I'm wondering if it's because of this. And then you can kind of open that dialogue a little bit. Another example of this, when it's not appropriate to bring to the family, might be just discussing it within your own supervision so that you can kind of understand how to appropriately manage it. And then lastly is the genogram. Just asking that you draw a genogram by hand, use some symbols. I would ask that you do use at least a couple of relational pattern symbols within the genogram. Basically do a little bit more than just, the squares and circles in the genogram. Use a couple of the symbols as well. I do understand for this particular genogram you may not have as much information as you did for your own family. So just use as much detail as you know or that you're aware of. So for this paper, there is a requirement for 4 or more scholarly sources, and the paper should be around 5 to 7 pages long. Make sure to use appropriate APA format. The APA manual is a good reference. There is also a good video posted on the MSW student resource Canvas page, as well as the Purdue OWL website is a good resource as well. So, and then down here we have the rubric. I kind of described this throughout, but as you see here, 35 points for the family interventions. Just make sure to place a good bit of focus there, since it's more heavily scored. Okay. And that's all I have. Just to make sure to reach out with any questions. I'll be available to answer whatever questions that you might have. And I really look forward to reading your papers.